Hi, my name is Michael Rice. I'm an attorney in California, and I'm also a software engineer. And recently, I've been playing around with blockchain and solidity smart contracts. So, I have a repo, an open source project that I started. I started with a bill of sale example, which I would love for you to see sometime. But I'm also starting on a new one, which is a probate or a will example. So this presentation is just to give you an introduction to it and hopefully get some interest from you so you can participate, contribute, or at least follow along. You can see the GitHub repo, which I'll put in the show notes below, is github.com/mrice slash solidity legal contracts. Like I said, I'm an attorney. My name is Michael Rice. You can email me here if you have any ideas, or even send a GitHub issue or something like that would be great. So first, before we talk about the code and where it is right now, I want to talk to you about how probate works. Now, like I said, I'm a lawyer in California, and this is based on California law, but I don't know, I'm not a very strong probate estate lawyer. So I know probate is something that only estates of certain sizes go through, but ultimately the process of administering the stuff you have or your assets when you die is kind of the same no matter what process you follow. So we're going to try to reduce this process into a solidity smart contract in a moment. So the first step is if somebody dies, somebody has to go to court, somebody else obviously, somebody else has to go to court and notify the court that they need to start a probate process. So that's this blue line of the person going to the court. In the process, the court will review the petition, look at the will, check its validity, do a number of other steps, and ultimately nominate this person or appoint this person as a administrator or executor of the estate. So that person's role now is to gather up the assets of the estate. So they'll gather up, say, the cars, houses, cash or monetary assets, and also any kind of liabilities like bills, unpaid invoices, medical bills maybe. And they will basically administer the estate and figure out what assets are remaining to distribute. And I apologize for my stick figures. I did this with my iPad and my fingers. It was the best I could do. So here's the administrator or the executor handing out assets to various people, possibly even creditors. So that's the process in a nutshell. So enough boring PowerPoints. Let's talk about the code that I'm putting together and hopefully we can work on together. Let's start with the Truffle framework. As you can see, this is part of the legal contracts project that is on GitHub. I've talked a little bit about it in other videos and on Medium about the bill of sale. We're going to focus on the probate.js file, which is the test-driven file I used to build the contract. Truffle always puts the test files in here by default and the actual solidity contracts here. So let's walk through the test case real quick, or test cases, so you can see what I've got so far. You can see this is part of Truffle. It sets up a new contract object. And within it, I define some variables that we hang on to. If at the time that Truffle runs, it feeds some Ethereum accounts, or blockchain accounts, I should say, I guess, into the contract tests. So the first one I grab is one that I call the contract owner, which is the account 0. Testator account, which is going to be the person that's defining the will that's captured in this solidity contract. An administrator, who will be not appointed by a court but by the testator. And I have one beneficiary at this point, just a daughter, since my oldest is a girl. So before each one, we're going to set up a new will instance where the contract owner is the constructor. And now let's walk through some of the test cases. So first it just checks to make sure that the contract deploys without error. Next it says that the contract owner should have been configured, which is kind of a no-brainer test. The next is it allows the contract owner and only the owner, if you look at these two tests, this one and this one together, to designate the testator. The testator would be like you. You're the one leaving a testamentary will or something that you want to happen. And I realize if you're an attorney watching this, You might realize I'm kind of conflating wills and probate and all kinds of stuff, but I think you get the idea. Next, it allows the testator to then appoint an administrator. So you can see we've got maybe 3 parties here, right? You've got the contract owner who creates and deploys the contract on the Ethereum blockchain, which could actually also be the testator. You've got the testator, which is basically you if you're the one trying to draft up this or launch this contract and have it in operation. And then the third person is an administrator. The administrator is going to be the one that you trust to designate that, yes, in fact, you are dead, or some events happen, like maybe you've gone missing for a while, to actually click the button that says, or to send this message to the smart contract saying it's time to distribute the funds from the contract to the beneficiaries. So you can see I don't have any, the only other function I have here so far is a part for adding a beneficiary to the estate. So obviously still lots to do there. I'd be super excited if you're interested in contributing and helping. Let's look over at the Solidity contract so far. Very light stuff here. It's on currently version 4.23, which is kind of a good time marker if you come look at this someday in the future, see how far things have gotten. But here's our contract. So you can see it captures the contract owner, the testator, the administrator, captures the owner. And here, this is kind of interesting, I think, to mention. 2 things. One is it uses modifiers to control access to the functions. Modifiers say maybe only the contract owner can designate the testator. Only the testator can appoint an administrator. And shoot, I don't have a modifier here on add beneficiary, so that's something I'll have to do, obviously. But something kind of interesting here, the testator only function needs to check 2 things. One, make sure that the testator, which is misspelled here, is actually defined, and the other is to make sure that whoever's calling the function is actually the testator. This is something I kind of struggled with early on, just because in the test cases I'd forgotten that the testator hadn't been defined. The other one that's kind of interesting is you'll see share here is actually an integer. So I'm still learning Solidity just like a lot of us are. What's kind of interesting to me is that Solidity doesn't have very good support for floating point numbers, because you would assume a share would be like a percentage, like 0.3 or 0.3333 or 4.39 or something, a fairly precise number. Since it doesn't have very good support for what they call fixed point numbers in Solidity right now, I'm just going to say share is a share of 100. So it'll have to be whole numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or whatever. And you can see here that as the testator ultimately can add the beneficiary, it adds it to a map. So the beneficiaries will be defined by their address on the blockchain. And ultimately, when we have the administrator call a function that says administrate the will, then the funds will, after the testator funds it, the funds will then get distributed. So I think it's a pretty simple example. It's almost like a trust, right? It's almost like an Ethereum-based trust. Now that you've seen the code, let's actually see it run. So as I mentioned, we're using the truffle test framework, which is just awesome to work with. We'll actually go ahead and run it against a local Ganache CLI that's running. I'm sorry, not the CLI, but the fat GUI. You can see I've still got the bill of sale in there. You can see it's running the tests, and they all pass. So I hope you'll consider getting involved in the project. As I mentioned, it's on GitHub. We've got a few stars right now, no forks, 2 watchers. Probably I'm one of them. And you can see all the same code we just talked about is online. You can see under the test folder, you can see our probate example. And under the contracts, you can see our contracts. There's our will. So hope you'll get involved. Look forward to seeing you out there. And again, my name is Michael Rice. I'm an attorney in California. I'm also a Solidity developer, so I hope to hear from you. Take care.